didn't even realize a lot of stuff that I was struggling with back then. I would never call it racism back then, but I started to see it, some of the structures that is kind of obvious. In university, my final year, I started to apply for roles, and I was like applying for CFO roles just because I was like wanted to see the feedback. Like I knew I wouldn't get it, but I just wanted to see like, what sort of feedback would I get. And
You wanted to get that no.
one of my most challenging years was family were quite against us, me and my wife having children at that age, and they were scared would we make it. And so we didn't get the support that we needed. So it was just me and my wife. Instead of the family coming in, they actually stepped away. I was known for doing some good work, but I was not recognized when it came to promotions or getting the bonuses. And I would start seeing some of my white peers start scaling up, and I'm like, they're slacking, like they're not doing half the work that I'm doing. I started to realize there was some indifference in this environment. Like, how comes they've got some sort of favoritism? When I apply for them, I'm not getting them, but I'm showing it through work. I had a really tragic car accident that I was involved in. In that whole space, I got mentally depressed. I spiraled. Like, I really struggled.
When you think about your journey, young family, growing that to now 5 kids, what are some of the major lessons that you can look back on now and be thankful and grateful for, but you weren't then?
And it sounds weird, but
Hello. We are back on Everyday Leadership. And as always, I have a great guest in the building for you all. Today, this is someone that I've got to know over the last, this is about 4 or 5 years now, actually. I've got to know our guest, and we've had some really great conversations around his journey, what he's navigated, even what he's building right now. And you know what? I'm gonna flip the script right from the start. I'm gonna ask my guest, Leonard Fom, to introduce himself, to introduce his businesses, to introduce like who is Leonard? How does he? I want to hear him say it.
no, thanks, Sophie. Thanks, man. And it's been a couple of years. So where do I start, man? Really, so Leonard from, in terms of father of 5, 5 children, beautiful wife, married for a number of years. So that's who I am in terms of my identity. I always want to share that first. And in terms of brought up in a loving Christian family, so I always start there. So those are my roots. But what do? I do a couple of things. Being a person of finance, in finance for about 20, I say 20 years. Yeah, about 20 years. When I left university, started out in corporate, but now I'm building out on multiple businesses. And I say multiple um, gracefully because I've got like a fractional finance CFO practice that helps small businesses to stabilize and grow and scale. And then I've got other ventures that I have around that. So I've got interest in strategy, working with larger organizations to help them on their journey of growth as well. So doing some coaching with some senior leaders in organizations as well. So yeah, that's me then.
Hmm. Man with many talents in many different areas, which we're definitely going to get into in today's episode. And I guess a great place I always like to understand is for someone who's been in finance for 20 years, multiple different companies you work for, real name brand companies that you delved into, Mastercard, EY, HSBC, all those different elements of stuff. For us to scale it back and understand a bit more about your journey, where you've come from, what were you like in a younger version of you first 10 years of your life?
Yeah, well, going back that far. So I've always been curious. I think one of the things is curious and super ambitious. So I've got 3 brothers, and that shaped me. I've got
You're
an
the
older
eldest?
brother. No, I'm second, I'm second. So I've got an older brother who, when I say an alpha male, he's the alpha male. Like literally. Like we grew up in Wandsworth, and we had to sort of fend for ourselves. My parents worked multiple jobs coming from Nigeria. And so literally we used to walk home from school together. My brother used to look after us. But obviously that came with his demands, he'll be like, do this, do that, do that. And so growing up in that atmosphere, and then also a lot of our friends were obviously boys as well. So, everyone we were around sort of had a good friend who had six brothers and another, like, so we were all boys, so definitely male dominated environment. But sports was also an anchor in our lives that helped us as well to focus. So sports and computer games were always competing. And so that helped me as an individual never to back down, but always to push. So yeah, I would lose, but I didn't like losing. Let me be honest, I didn't like losing. I always want to sort of win. And the pinnacle was to beat my older brother at anything and everything. So if that's computer game, if that's football, if that's basketball, I just want to be on that winning side trying to beat him. Because if I could beat him, I felt like I could beat anyone. So yeah, I was very competitive. Although I wouldn't say it much, inside I had that burning fire. Like a lot of people will be like, Leonard, you're quiet. And I'll be like, quiet. But inside I had that inner confidence, if it were.
Where did that inner confidence and that burning fire come from for you?
I think, yeah, it's partly because being middle child, there's that middle child syndrome. So my older brother, 2 years above me, younger brother, 2 years under, and then the younger came a little bit later. But it was always trying to find my footing, in amongst the family. And, my parents were very busy, so there was an element of them not being around. So I can tell you some stories, some funny stories. Like we used to like compete to get to breakfast and eat first, and then whoever like get your food, and whoever sort of didn't finish had to then clean up. Like whoever was the last had to clean up. And my older brother used to hold me back to get like my younger one. So it's that sort of stuff, like those little digs constantly that I was always having to sort of wash the plates, fold the clothes, all those sort of things as a result of that challenge. And so that's where that fire, that annoyance sort of was birthed. And that was like the first, I guess, 10 years and beyond. 10 years of my life, I guess, yeah, came from.
Hmm. Being a middle child, fighting in one way, shape, or form, which to be fair, I think is quite common for middle children to kind of navigate what that looks like. I am guess I'm curious to hear from you when you think about your post that year, going to secondary school and all that kind of stuff. At that point in time, did you have a clue around what you wanted to be, what you wanted to do?
A little. And I think my dad was in finance, so my dad was an accountant. And I looked up to my dad like highly. Again, he also was part of my identity, seeing him being very entrepreneurial back in the 80s, working multiple jobs, I think 3 or 4 jobs. Like we barely saw him to make ends meet for us. And so I wanted to go down that finance route. I knew he was doing quite well. I still remember, like, again, for me it was huge. But when we managed to get our first nice car, the Renault 25, I think, and it was like electric, and we used to get like hyped about it as boys. I was always aspirational about trying to follow in his footsteps in business. And alongside that, my dad then went on into the 90s. Mobile phones was coming out. And so he got a mobile shop and done okay in terms of like creating this mobile shop. And then he went out to Nigeria, and then he went and done stuff in Nigeria. So my route was like quite inspired by him. to go into finance and then see how I can sort of follow in his footsteps.
But it sounds like your dad was a entrepreneur, but you
He
went
was.
into the, I guess I want to call it the corporate world. So where you know everything, you're like, let me just go direct, follow dad's footsteps, start a business from young, grind things out. Why did you decide to go down the corporate route?
It's interesting. So the truth be told is that my dad sort of operated in his own lane. So whilst he was doing entrepreneur, he didn't really share those steps. He was just doing stuff. So in the back of my mind, yes, would love to be entrepreneurial, but how to do it, um, I didn't know how, like really. Like you could see it from afar, but there was no guidance and steps. And the natural thing was, okay, get your education. So my parents were very big on education. So focused on, my A levels and then go to get a degree. So going through the traditions, and then for me was, okay, get a job. Like natural thing was like, okay, get a job. That's what people do. Like get a degree and then you get into a job. And so it was always just working through. But actually, the truth was I wanted to be at the top. Whatever I did, I wanted to be at the top of my game. I wanted to be a CFO. Like, I wanted to be like, I knew I was doing finance, and that's what I did in my degree, but I wanted to crush it. And it's crazy. Like, this is how crazy I am with stuff. Like, in university, my final year, um, I started to apply for roles, and I was like applying for CFO roles, like back then, like, just because I was like, wanted to see the feedback. Like, I knew I wouldn't get it, but I just wanted to see like what sort of feedback would I get, and
You wanted to get that no.
yeah, I didn't care, man. I just said, let me just, see the experience. And obviously, it was no, no, no. But I always had my mind on the goal, to try and get to the top of any organizations. Um, and so yeah, my journey began into my career, from there.
So there are a lot of times when you're young and you're very, very ambitious and you know where you want to get to, it is sometimes hard to be able to, I guess, have delayed gratifications in a sense and recognize you kind of need to start at the bottom to build your way out to the top. And it's something that I definitely have a lot of conversations about with people from all different ages, to be honest. How did you manage to navigate that? Because you already had that ambition from when you were at uni, you were already applying for those roles.
Yeah, yeah. No, good question. So it came from, to be honest, the responsibility of having a family. So I knew I was really ambitious, but I had my first daughter at the age of 2021 in university in my final year. And so whilst I was aiming high, the reality was that actually I need to work my way up, and there's a responsibility of just earning. And so I started out in a call center, whilst I was at university. And then the next step was looking for a finance role once I finished university, and then started my accounting qualifications. So it was just like, little by little. So started out at NHS, worked there for a year in Derby, and then moved down into London with my wife and my child. And then, yeah, started out in publishing, and then from publishing went in and went, and it just started to roll from there. And I was doing my accounting qualifications, raising a family, and then also doing the best work that I could do with any organization that I was in. And so it was really nice because every organization I was in, I was either promoted very quickly or recognized by my skill set, my knowledge, my hunger, and working with senior management. Talking to you know finance directors or finance controllers, and being poised and very good at Excel. Excel being huge, like good at modeling and creating sort of what they needed, reports and insights for them to navigate their businesses. So that came kind of naturally, and I was quite good at it, and that's how I scaled up in my career and excelled quite quickly in my career at that point in time.
Being a young father, I can speak from, from experience. Um, it is never easy being able to hold down the family as well as start your career. And there's so many things that come that are wrapped up in that from both the internal personal drive stroke, should I call it fear, stroke shame, stroke all that kind of elements wrapped around it. And then there's the external and the world view as well. How did you navigate it in your journey for you?
It was tough, it was really tough. I think one of my um, most challenging years was in that time because family were quite against us, me and my wife, having children at that age. And I think they were scared. They were scared, would we make it, you know? And so we didn't get the support that we needed. And so it was just me and my wife. Instead of the family coming in, they actually stepped away. So yes, like you said, the pressures of not only there's so many different angles to this, learning about myself. I was 21, 22, like knowing who I was. Like I didn't even quite understand who I was as an individual, let alone my wife and getting into that union. So, it was tough. And I can't lie, it was tricky, challenging times. I would say my faith was quite key. So definitely leaning into my faith and, being in scripture, being in the word, having good people within our church around us to nurture us. I can't say without that support, I don't know where we'd be. So we had good people within our local fellowship. But then also my wife, my wife's been a rock. She's been fantastic in terms of taking care of the children because I was the breadwinner. And so we just assumed our roles. I will go out, she'll be looking after the children. I think initially, again, being quite young, not really appreciating that, how hard it is to be a mum. You know, it's tough. It's tough with kids. And again, we started to build a family. So it wasn't one, but then went up to two to three. And so we had three children in a space of what, about 6 years. But we had three children. And that was a choice that we made, but we always wanted to have, three children. And so it was a gradual process of learning to love one another, love our children, commit to work, again, trying to exceed in work with all the pressures that you get in terms of the corporate environment, being a person of color. Um, and so all of these things ultimately has helped me. If I look then, it was painful. If I look now, I see it as something that's helped me grow as a man, as a person, and a leader. So
No. What was described it as painful back then, without that benefit of looking backwards. What was painful around it then
yeah,
for
I
you?
think the painful was the disagreements between me and my missus and my wife. That was a pain because we didn't get each other. It will be a case of she wouldn't understand that why am I working late? And I'm like, why get? And so the pain was the friction between ourselves. That was the pain. Um, and also the disappointment, I guess, of family. We were hoping family would be coming in. Instead, they turned away. So we were very vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. And so that's why I talk about the painful moments because there were late nights and things like that um, that we had to navigate and get through. And then, build the children up and, protect them as well as best as possible from the times where we were conflicted. So yes. And then again, as a man personally, no one really understanding me. Like I didn't have many men around me. Like I was literally doing this alone. And so I didn't have like an older brother to lean up to because he hadn't had children at the time or didn't have many friends at that time going like, hey, I'm going through this. Like it was just me navigating it all. So yeah, it was a lot that I had to take in, and you know, we had automations put on us, like especially my wife, about from her parents, you know, leave him, da da da, da, and she had to navigate all that. It was crazy, man. Like if I look back, it's so funny. I just look back and I think, ultimately, God, you're good. You're good. You're good. Like, yeah. And yeah, I pinch myself a little bit because I've got children now of the similar age of when we started. And I'm thinking, how would they cope? Like, it's interesting how we got through it. And when I say interesting, from a point of I'm grateful. I'm really grateful that we managed to get through it.
I think that there's a the mindset and the resilience that is built in those challenges that you just kind of described when you're navigating the family dynamics. If you navigate family dynamics being young, that's one thing. Let alone then everything else that's happening around you, and you talk about like going through that alone. That's even tough because then you're just forced to figure things out for yourself. And which will mean on that journey, and I definitely did it. There were mistakes that I made because I didn't know any better. But that's why it's also beautiful when you have that person beside you where it's that recognition and that forgiveness that you just keep on giving to each other as you both figure things out, as you navigate, as you go from young kids to parents to husband and wife and all those different elements as well.
Um, definitely, definitely. And I think you hit it. You hit a good word, like the forgiveness and resilience and endure the patience. All those things that you talked about is what has been the beauty in this, and sharing that with my wife, like you said, like we can now look back and go, wow, like how beautiful, the beautiful struggle is to actually go through the is it the valleys and then you come up and you start
Mm-hmm.
rising up. So yeah.
You have had I guess what I would call a portfolio career, and you have worked with some like really, really big names all the way throughout. I think you've got Lloyd's, Barclays, HSBC, RBS. Like you worked with a lot of major main players, major banks, and financial services. What's been that corporate journey been like for you? What are some of the, I guess, the key lessons, the key losses that you've kind of gleaned from that that's helped you develop and grow to who you are now?
Yeah. Yeah, like to be honest, like I feel really blessed that I've had the opportunity to get involved with some of these big businesses from a point of professionalism and excellence and, working at the highest level, with some really bright, intelligent guys, good people, good teams. It hasn't always been the case. Like, so I can look at experiences when I was at Lloyd's and I really enjoyed it because I was around some really good people that I was working with. The challenge that I experienced though was some of the biases that I experienced whilst there. Because wherever I work, I try and put my best foot forward. So whilst I'm working with others, I'm trying to sort of, like I said, this competitive nature is where I'm just pushing, not because I'm even competing against others. It's just that I'm showing up and trying to be the best. And at Lloyd's, for instance, I remember building up like the FP&A budgeting process and trying to or automating that and using macros and templates and streamlining the process. And then creating at the point at that time, I remember at Lloyd's, for instance, I'm using this example where finance was behind the scenes, and I felt actually we need to be more speaking to our clients in terms of who we serve. So I would speak to the heads of functions in IT, like the data center head of function or security side. I'll speak to them and say, look, we're creating all these reports. Are you even using them? Like what? And they'll be like, it's all like, they'll be like, yeah, but like, it's not everything we need. And so understanding those requirements and then building out things that they needed, and developing these reports. I was known for doing some good work, but, and this is the but, I was not recognized for it when it came to promotions or getting the bonuses and things like that. So, and I would start seeing some of my peers, like um, white peers, start scaling up, and I'm like, they're slacking, like they're not doing half the work that I'm doing. They're doing work, but and so that I started to realize there was some indifference in this environment. Like, how comes they've got some sort of favoritism? How comes they're getting these senior roles? When I apply for them, I'm not getting them, but I'm showing it through work. And I think that's what I began to realize, that actually there's something here. And I didn't used to think about it from a racist point of view, to be honest. I didn't see it from that point of view, but I started to realize there is a bias. And that led me, actually, because I started at Lloyd's, to explore the whole freelancing route in my career. And so I moved from a permanent role into freelancing because I realized there was some form of politics at play. And so I moved from there into other roles, other corporate organizations. And I felt in some, like I said, good teams, good managers, good experiences, but others where there was like definitely um, biases, there'll be, and again, I don't want to name names, but yeah, in certain environments, very toxic, you have backbiting or gossiping and name calling, and even if you're doing good work, trying to slander what you're doing, and so it's a tough one, especially as you begin to scale, like from a senior finance business partner to more into senior director, that director level. It becomes a lot more difficult because there's less of us, black people, in those roles. And so, whilst I'm very good with people, I working with senior managers, I never ever got the recognition that I felt that I was doing in some of these roles.
When you're starting to rise up through a career, you've got that, your eyes are open, you're recognizing certain things and you're moving. Did you then have space and places you could go to talk, or were you still kind of going through that alone? Because I know it was like for me, and even at that point in time, I still felt very lonely. When I was dealing with some of the similar things that you just kind of described. So, what was that for you? The reason why I really want to actually know that is we talk a lot about men in particular and the way that men carry and how we carry it. And there's some of us where we carry that internally and we're just trying to figure things out and we're trying to deal with all that stuff, foolishness at work, but then we've got home to deal with and sort out. And we don't ever really have that space to land and go through. And it can be very tiring and draining and painful and so many different ends. And you got some other guys where it's like, nope, I got places I can go to. I can just pour out, share. Life is good, and I'm just navigating. Like, what was that for you?
Extremely difficult, let me be honest again. So I, again, live in very white spaces where I live. And so I didn't have anyone that can lean on. In my social circles and surroundings, in terms of family as well, I was probably the only person playing at this level in terms of my family, in terms of my career. So brothers will be like, yeah, man, just keep on crushing it. Keep on crushing. I'm like, yeah, but you don't quite get like that. It's not like that. Like, yes, I'm in these big names, but it's difficult to navigate. And then, again, you got the responsibility of being a father and a husband. And so, like you said, had no real circles to really express how I was feeling. Like I said, I couldn't go to a Bible group like Bible study and sort of really share my spaces because most of the people in my Bible studies were not of my culture. So a lot of it, yeah, a lot of it was just here, bro. Honestly, all here. Um, and it's only until I don't even know when there were, like you said, I did meet a couple of um brothers along the way, but they weren't always in my team, you know. So every now and then we'll catch up for lunch and we'll have some matters and sharing how we feel. But that was it, like, and it was very few and far between. There was no real community that I could really lean into. And sometimes it wasn't even black guys. Sometimes it would be like I remember this Polish guy that I met along the way in HSBC, and I got on really well with him because he would have his frustrations. So I would just try and lean and leverage on certain people, but it wasn't everyone. But then I think the power of LinkedIn, I would say that LinkedIn was probably where I started to see a few black people. I started to see, oh, okay, you know, there's certain other people doing okay, you know, outside of my little ecosystem at the time. So I think, yeah, starting to lean into that. And then there are certain events that start to take place, I guess, globally, you know. So I remember one of them, Colin Kaepernick, American football player, and him taking a knee, you know, um, and then getting scrutinized for it. And so Black Lives Matter started to sort of bubble up. But even back then, you know, it was kind of a taboo to talk about race and stuff like that in organizations. It was really very, very rare. And I don't even think about when it was probably at MasterCard when I remember they had like this black network that I could really lean into. But outside of that, yeah, it was just literally just navigating these circles by myself and, you know, just keeping it all in. But it was MasterCard, I think. Yeah, I remember 2017, 18, 2018, when I realized, there's something beyond just that, beyond just doing it yourself, where you can lean into a group of people and talk to others who are going through the same sort of experiences.
When was it that, or was that when you got into those circles or spaces, or was it just even based on other things that have happened since that you then thought about actually, I'm going to call it reigniting that entrepreneurial desire that you've seen your dad doing all these many, many years ago? Or has that always been there? You just kind of dulled it down for a minute.
Yeah, so funny. So it was, I know when it happened. And so one thing that I think, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I had a really tragic car accident that I was involved in. And in that whole space, I got mentally depressed and, you know, I spiraled. Like I really struggled. And the person that I had the accident with lost his life. And it meant that I struggled for about 11 months dealing with that whole trauma. And I was out of work actually for 11 months as a contractor. So hard time for us as a family. And as a result, um, I was going down, but it broke something within me at the same time because we needed help really from our church community. And yes, there was help in terms of food parcels and things like that. But what I needed help with was really work. And, you know, I used to speak to these, and a lot of the guys that I worked with or we went to church with were bankers. Like I'm talking about top lawyers, top barristers, you know, great church, right? But they knew the need in some sense, and they knew my career. You know, they knew how we served as well in our local church. They knew everything they're doing, and it broke in me because I was like, we need help. Like 11 months without being paid is a long time. I've got 5 children, you know, all this like, on me, and I'm thinking, And so something started to go like, you can't depend on anyone. You can't force the hand on anyone. And this is when I'm recovering. So I was going through therapy and things like that. But I started to say, Leonard, you have to think bigger than just a contract. You need to be multifaceted. You need to think of your business. This career in, we're vulnerable, but you need to be smarter. Yes, you've got some investments, but you need to play a bigger game. And so that's the journey I started to come out of from 2017, 18. And then I was able to come back into corporate. So I went into MasterCard in 2018. And it's at that point when, like you said, I didn't even realize a lot of stuff that I was struggling with back then. I would never call it racism, Sope. I wouldn't back then. But I started to see it, some of the structures that is kind of obvious. So when I was at MasterCard, I started to think, how comes we're all at a seventh grade and in Europe? Like, and I came into MasterCard at quite a senior role, like a director role. And in that financial director role, again, had a couple of people underneath me and things like that. But that was it. Like, no one was like vice presidents or senior vice presidents, executive vice presidents, and I was dealing with these guys like on a daily basis in terms of reporting up to these guys. But I'm like, where are we? And then I would speak to other black individuals, and then I say, how long have you been here? Like 20 years, 15 years. And you've never moved to VP, like in Europe. And it was just like, it was very clear for me. So I realized, yes, that's when I started to see this whole structural thing. And then Colin Kaepernick sort of thing started to come through. And I did one thing, and I remember doing this. And I don't know if this was one of the things that hampered me at MasterCard, but again, I'm quite bold. So I said, well, there's this Black Lives Matter thing. We should have people come in and talk about their journeys. And I still remember the individual, Gavin Lewis. I don't know if you know the name, Gavin Lewis. And I brought Gavin Lewis to come in and do a talk in MasterCard about his journey because he talked about, again, it was LinkedIn. And I remember seeing him talk about the kinks in the hosepipe. And I was like, yes, see, it's kind of obvious, people are seeing this. So I wanted him to come in and he did a wonderful talk about his career and his career journey to exceed, like rise to the top. And then there was another guy who came in, I forgot his name, but two of them did a great piece. And still up until today, I was doing well at MasterCard, but from that point onwards, hey, come see my career start wobbling. Like I was like, what? Like I was doing well. And it was like interesting because after that, I think a few more people were getting more confident. But my career began to become quite unstable in MasterCard. And again, I'm just telling it as it is, man. Like I'm telling it as it is. Since that time, I remember leaving MasterCard and it was so interesting. Like the way they did their thing on me, I was like, wow. Yeah. But it was this whole disciplinary thing, and I left in a way that I like in bad terms with them, and I was going for a racial and an obvious racial thing, which I spoke about it with HR. As a contractor, you shouldn't do that because when I started to raise it, it was like getting out there, and so yeah, I was fired, and that was painful. That was painful because I was doing good work, and then all of a sudden I was this villain. So like I said, the experience of the corporate world is very interesting. Um, sure, no, it is, bro.
Hmm. I guess someone will listen to this and they'll say, you're off for 11 months and you're finally back into that and you're a great organization, Leonard. Why not just head down, get on your work, don't raise any issues, don't say anything, don't talk about being black or your observations. Like, you've been out for 11 months, you're finally getting back on your feet. Why not just stay silent?
And this is a beauty. So I'm more than just doing a job. I'm a human being, and I have certain values and principles that I live by. So if I see injustice, I'll call it out, and I'm wired that way. So I can't fake the funk. I can't fake it, man. So it's just a case of I'm seeing something. Yes, it is. And I could have gone that route by keeping quiet, but by nature I'm not that way. So since my childhood, like I said, I've always been competitive. I'll be someone who call things out as it is. And this is one of the reasons why, when you're talking about this whole corporate thing, one of the reasons why I don't want to be in environments where I have to fake it. I just want to be real. I want to work and do good work. And I want people to appreciate me for who I am. I don't need to do anything because of a job. I'm not wed. My identity isn't a job. My identity is much more than that.
Identity is quite it's such a powerful topic, and one that I see leaves a lot of people in a chokehold. Like, people don't know who they are. People know the name of the badge of the company they work for, and that becomes their identity. But being actually really know who you are, it's something that is not common for a lot of people, and they have to go through some work and some pain to go through. What was it that helped you be able to identify, or helped you know who you were and really know what your identity was?
Again, circumstances, and this is the beauty of it. So after leaving MasterCard on those terms, we were entering into 2020. And the natural thing at the time, I wasn't thinking of starting a business or anything like that, was look for work. So this is an interesting thing. I now have had, at that point, multiple years experience with multiple large corporates. I'm now applying for roles, but the roles that I used to get quite simply were just blocked. I'll apply for roles that literally finance business partner for this, blocked. It just felt like being blocked. I'm like, what's going on? So I don't know if, again, I don't know about the system, but it felt a bit odd. For 3 months, I was just not getting anything in financial services. So pandemic happens in March, lockdown. And so it's not only now I can't get into financial services, the world is locked down. Like, I'm like, whoa, what's going on? What do I do now? So I'm thinking, help people. Go to coaching and just help people. So I went on a coaching course and I took it online. I was looking through this whole coaching course and I was thinking I was going to coach others, which I did. But the coaching course actually helped me to be very self-reflective on who I am. When you talk about identity, who am I? What has been my childhood experiences? Doing some really deep work around sort of self-reflection, being fully present, transition, all these things that were fantastic for me. And it started to realize I wasn't really being true to myself, trying to move into environments of corporate. So maybe, Leonard, you might need to start thinking of repositioning yourself and reframing what I do. So that was the whole experience of beginning to open up my mind on, okay, why don't I start exploring working with small businesses? And so I did. And first and foremost was through coaching. And that coaching was mainly pro bono at the time. So I was able to work with businesses and advise and help them navigate the whole of the pandemic or parts of the pandemic for their own organizations. But it led me to build a confidence in myself, saying that I'm doing good work and I love the work that I'm doing without being paid. So I've got this drive now to work with businesses without having to be fake. I could be fully me. And at that point, it struck that Leonard, you're going to be okay. Because obviously financially it was a bit difficult, but I had obviously saved a bit at that time and had a little bit allowing us to sort of move forward as a family. But I was confident from that point in time that actually whatever I do, I'm going to be successful because I'm doing it from a place of love and service rather than chasing the check. Because previously I was chasing a paycheck. Now I'm chasing, I guess, my identity and my purpose in terms of work that I want to do. Fast forward a couple of years, I went back into contracting, freelancing a bit, but slightly different. It was transformations and it was like I was doing systems transformation, but it was more team transformations and culture, and I was doing a bit of that work. And then came into EY. EY at the time, again, knew my experience, but the role I took because I needed sort of stability on finances was a lot lower. And I said to the individuals who were recruiting me that I should be at a certain level. Why they kept me low? But I knew in my head already, like, you do that, I'm gonna leave. I'm not gonna stay around. So the market might be down, but it's gonna turn at a point. And it did, So during that time, I was just learning, just getting by. But as soon as the market turned, found another role. But this is when I started to realize, Leonard, you need to start thinking of creating a business. Like, stop being um, influenced by others or controlled by others' narratives. Create your own narrative.
So now you run multiple businesses.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that you hear when it comes to entrepreneurship is like niche down. Focus on one thing, focus on one thing. You have gone the complete opposite. So like why? Why do you have multiple
Uh,
endeavors? What's the deal behind that?
okay. The endeavors. So to be fair, there's two key businesses. Others are sort of more, you know, on the side. But the two things was still maintain your exposure in corporate, but navigate that differently. Instead of working through agents or someone else, go direct in terms of and one of my businesses is called Tick Services, so transformation, innovation, change services. Keep that alive. Don't kill it. Don't crush it. But make sure that it's aimed at a specific area. And so some of the deep work that I've been doing is on clarity on what I do, clarity of because I struggled. I really struggled in terms of I was trying to do everything together. But I realized actually if I split the two businesses that I'm doing is at least stay in finance and work within your strength in that space and do that for small, medium-sized businesses and work in that space of finance, business partnering as a CFO, knowing all the knowledge that I have and applying that into small businesses to help them grow with the relationships that I've built over the years. But don't let go of tech services because still you've got the relationships in corporate. You still can go into corporate and do transformations. You still can go into that space and offer up services around leadership and strategy. So that's why I have the two businesses. And it's also not all about you. So I learned that actually you need to build a team. The way you're going to grow and develop these two businesses is working with others, collaborations and partnerships into certain spaces. So I was with Tick Services. I've been blessed to go to Nigeria and do work in Nigeria with government agencies, and there's more work happening in that space around culture. But within, and so I almost look at those as one-off every now and then projects that I can collaborate and co-collaborate with individuals Whereas with FinOps Squad, it's more a day-to-day basis with smaller businesses, but work and build a team and a brand around FinOps Squad. So I've created something called Finance Operations Squad, and that's to go into businesses that don't have a finance expert on a day-to-day basis, but might need that guidance to help them have stability and then strategic focus so go forward. So yeah,
Hmm. Do you have a preference between both?
at the moment my baby is FinOps Squad. It is. That's my baby, and the only reason why I've really got, and I say it because I've taken time to build something that I like. Like when I say like, I've got like a lot of my branding around it. So I've got sports, I've got streetwear, I've got coach. I mean, it's really vibing, and I want to make finance different. And so yeah, I've put a lot of effort. And to be honest, the journey is kind of new. The beginning of the year. So it started at the end of last year when I really started to think about it. Beginning of the year. I really sort of said, okay, let's go in and build a brand and work with a graphic designer and work around it. So yes, that's my preference at the moment, and it's nice building a team that I'm having around the business and seeing them get excited by what we're doing and everything
Right.
else. So
When you think about your journey, starting out young, family, growing that to now 5 kids, going through corporate, now having multiple businesses, what are some of the major lessons that you can look back on now and be thankful and grateful for, but you weren't then?
yeah, I think, and it sounds weird, but grateful for pain.
Wow.
Yeah, grateful for pain in terms of it's made me grow. Now, at the time, I didn't like it, and I'll say to you, I would have never go for. I would not want to go for it again. But without it, I would not have. I could not have been who I am today. And I almost akin this to going to the gym and working out and working hard. You know, when you have a really hard workout and you're on the floor like sweating and you're broken, you're like, what the hell have I done? But there's only when you look in the mirror and you look back and you're like, right, actually, I'm getting some results. And obviously, it's not the first time. You have to do it consistently, consistently. And it's only after like a couple of months you look back and you're like, right, all that hard work has paid off. I think that's one of the lessons. Like I used to look at the pain like, but now I look back and I'm like, well, I'm blessed. I'm blessed because it's helped me to be where I am today. Definitely. That's one of the lessons. Second one is my wife, you know. Kudos, she's wonderful. Like I would not be the man that I am today without her. 23 years we just celebrated of our wedding anniversary, and she's been the rock in my corner, and she's never wavered, has always believed, always trusted, always encouraged, always supported, has done such an amazing job with my children. Um, so all five of them, they're all thriving, and that in itself, whew, I feel blessed. Hey, I think I feel I've won. I've won already, just because of my children and where they're going and who they are. I feel blessed. Um, yeah, there's loads, man. I can go on and on, bro. I can. I think another thing is relationships that I'm beginning to build. I think, um, yeah, the journey has been lonely. The first part of it, but now like I'm meeting people like yourself and there's others. Um, I feel blessed, richly blessed, because I didn't really think there were other people crushing it. It was only until like I said to about 2020, 2019, when I started to realize there are a lot of successful black excellent people who I can look up to or lean on or speak to. I'm not on this journey alone. Not only am I not on it alone, but they're also doing amazing things that inspire me to do even more. I think that in itself is another blessing. And there's lots of us now. And I think like it's beautiful to see this whole community rising. I can't wait to see actually, God willing, what my children will come and see, beyond me. So it's nice, man. Those are three things for sure. Three things.
Love that. It would be remiss of me if I didn't ask you what is like the key lesson you have learned after 23 years of marriage.
Whew. God, that's one. Shit. If I'm honest, I think it's when the verse in the Bible about Christ being the thing, and I just think how much he loves me. Wow. That's definitely one, like knowing the love of Christ. Um, I think I've learned also that service and servant heartedness and servant leadership is the most important thing that one can do, to serve wholeheartedly. I think before I used to think it was about me, but it's actually being able to serve. And sometimes I think a lot of people would ask me, why didn't I start this journey earlier? In terms of entrepreneurship as well. And part of it was that I didn't know whether it would have been right by me to put my family maybe through a lot of uncertainty back then. I had to hold it together. I felt the responsibility to hold and serve, even though I didn't want to be in certain places. And that service was just to, I think my last two roles, I didn't want to be there, but I had to hold it and just sacrificially just do it for the sake of my family and serve my wife and my children. And so, yeah, that's the service.
I love that. There's times when we make those decisions and choices, but it's not just about us, the individual. It's about the whole unit. And being able to think about me making this move now, does it help me or serve me? Does it actually help serve my family? And it's never an easy choice to make, but even thinking about it, I think makes such a massive difference. So I love that. And when you start to think about the future now, what is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to put out into the world through the businesses that you're doing?
Yeah, ultimately, I've got like this, like with FinOps Squad, we've got like something called Work Smart, Have Fun, and Make an Impact. And those three things is sort of the premises. So I want to work smarter. And when I say work smart, with the people that I want to and environments, that's for both collaborating with individuals, also the team, and also the businesses that we serve. So everyone is working, utilizing maybe automation, AI, but more than that, like just being human and enjoying the work that we're doing. And so that's part of the fun bit. And then the ultimate is impact. I would love that my children can follow in my footsteps and outlive like what I'm doing. So this is like almost just a foundation. So it's seeing my children sort of do and go way beyond what I'm doing. And then also, last thing is the whole community piece. I really love to see Black people really exceeding, and I'm saying that like globally, and not only in the West but Africa. I'm really keen to see a difference back home. And one of the reasons why I set up my back office back home is for that, because there's so much talent and opportunity for home and rising them up as a nation. I think this is something that I know I want to have that legacy play where it's Africa rising. And I would love to see in my generation before I get past to see Africa raising, like when I mean being a dominant force across the world. And I'm hoping we're heading that way. You know, we're seeing stuff like in Rwanda, you're seeing stuff, you know, Ghana's getting there, you know, Nigeria, even though it's challenging, I just know on ground, hearing some of the bright minds and intelligent people, what they're thinking of doing. So, yes, leadership is at the top, is there, but I feel there's something coming, there's something brewing.
I love that. And to be fair, I agree with you. I think when I look at the next generation coming up even more, there's a drive and a hunger with advancement in technology that I think actually helps, which wasn't there previously. And I think there's also this more globalized recognition across countries. Normally, you might have something in isolation in one part of the nation, but now because of social media, you can see no, everyone's feeling this way, and therefore it kind of mobilizes people. I think it's a powerful time for sure. I guess my last question, as always, how do you define leadership?
Leadership, wow, hey, amazing words. Oh, how do I define it? Man. I think the thing is, I think a lot of people don't realize that we all have our own narrative and stories, and sharing those stories can empower others. So I think we're all leaders in essence. I think it's that identification of helping to move others forward towards a goal or a specific purpose. That's what I would say, and that's kind of high level. But you put me on the spot. I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, but I think it's being able to articulate your story, your narrative, and help um, others move forward on their journey to their purpose.
It's been a number of things in this conversation that I did not know. That's been helpful to get to know, but I think it even speaks to a man's desire to bring change. And I think a lot of times we see a lot of great people doing great things, but we never quite understand like how did you even get to that point where you're doing what you're doing right now, that you're driven in the way that you're moving. And it's good to understand like, you know, like I love what you said around the pain. Like a lot of this came through pain. I always ask the question to people when they're like, "Oh my gosh, I see you traveling everywhere. It looks amazing." I'm like, "Yeah, but are you willing to do what it took?" Because I don't want to necessarily give you my opinion. I don't think that's what it is. But our journeys are all unique in such a way, but yet there are things we can pick from and learn from, and understand that to move us to where we want to go, that North Star, it's not always easy, but you do get there. It just takes time and effort and pain to be able to navigate that. So it's such a powerful story and journey that you've kind of gone through. And thank you for coming on and sharing it.
No, thank you for inviting me. No, I appreciate it, bro. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, just catching up with you. But thank you.
All the information around Leonard, his companies, how you can get involved and work with him will be available in the show notes. Until next week, this is Everyday Leadership.